carry on.
Okay.
I think.
Play as well.
So, you know, we were once again challenged by the digital world as we were talking about it. And you pointed out that there's been this, you know, of course, there's been an incredible period of development going on in your career in the intervening years. Let's go back from the upcoming Biennale for a minute and talk a little bit more about those aspects that you want to discuss.
Yeah, let's return a little bit to those 80s, because I think that's the beginning of the computer revolution, first of all. And I guess my work kind of just rode that wave, if you will.
Right.
I mean, I started working with computers in '86, and that was well before PCs, of course, but I already could see that they were very tied into ideology and where the power was going to go in society, and that was sort of my theme in the drawings.
Right.
These complex drawings that had to do with kind of cliche images of power and sports and sex and religion and things like that, ideological imagery. And that led me, and I was photographing those and blowing them up photographically. And that led me to work in a studio, and the guy told me, well, there's this new computer robotic machine that we could try, and that was this, basically this technique. This piece I think is from '88.
Right.
But I started a whole series of paintings, computer robotic paintings, I call it.
So, but you know, talking about this painting, because this is a great example of, I think, of the work that I remember, and I see there's this, for many people, there's you know, this clear tension between the automatically generated image and human figure. Can you talk about that tension?
Yeah. I'm very interested in this push-pull between figure and ground, and I mean, it's really become stronger in my work as I got more involved with visual noise to complicate the easy representational logo, the kind of easy communicative figure ground where there's a middle ground, a clear distinction between those fields, because I think, you know, it just touches on what I feel is the energetic reality underneath.
So do you feel that some of these music, these sort of sound texts that you're playing with, do you think that want to comment on how that might close or widen that gap between figure and ground?
Well, I think when you're going in kind of on a micro level, on a granular level, and you're sort of exploring the resources within any virtual potential situation. I know I sound like Deleuze now, but
that's fine.
That's fine.
That's fine for this magazine.
He's pretty much my guru. Anyways, pretty much. You know, I admire what he did a great deal. And I met Felix Guattari once. I had the pleasure of going to his house once.
Yeah, well,
that was a very long time ago. But he's still very, very important. Deleuze is particularly very, very important to me. Anyway, this idea of like exploring the resources within any kind of virtual potentiality is sort of the ground on which, you know, everything is floating. So you have singularity, but there's also this incredible ground of potentiality that the algorithms, if you set it up and use chance, particularly chance operations within the algorithms, you can really get down into that underbelly and explore, you know, possibilities of creativity.
Well, it's interesting that you make a brief reference to Deleuze and Guattari, because I think that they were prescient in many ways in articulating the digital world that we now sort of take for granted. And while the way that they were expressing it wasn't necessarily the language we currently use, I think the ground rules of the instincts were absolutely there.
Yeah, I think they had incredible instincts. I think that's exactly what it was. You can't say that they were visionaries of technology, but they actually just had a much broader social and revolutionary political point of view that encompassed, you know, where the technology is today. I mean, for better or worse, you know, sometimes for worse, sometimes for better, obviously. It's a double-edged.
And it seems now that there's quite a bit of resurgence of interest in that body of work, sort of philosophically, and this also brings us back to the point where we were talking a little bit before the interview resurgence of interest in your work as well and what you're doing. And that brings us to this current project that you're
Right.
working on, the immersion into noise.
Yeah,
space.
let's talk about this. This is a book that I published with Open Humanities in 2011, so 2 years ago already, or a year and a half ago. And it's an open source scholarly project, so the book is a free ebook. Anyone can just Google Immersion into Noise, go to their site and download it, read it on their iPad or computer, or as HTML. But you can also order it on Amazon from anywhere around the world if you prefer paper. I like both. And they both have their advantages and disadvantages. And in the book, I started out with my interest in noise music because I saw myself creating this symphony using the algorithm called the Viral Symphony. And it was basically a noise symphony. And then I thought, well, gee, what else has been done in that field? I hadn't really, I've always loved music, but I never really studied classical music or anything, so I didn't really know. So I started to look around, and I saw there was very little written about noise music, even though I could sense there was action going on. I had met Merzbow, I had curated some cassette tapes and stuff, and yet nothing seemed to be systematically about. There was Paul Hegarty's book, Noise Music, and that was pretty much it. So I decided I would try to assemble historical examples of noise music, of course, starting with the futurists, Luigi Russolo, who 100 years ago this year wrote the manifesto, Art of Noises. And this is going to relate to the exhibition in Venice. So I put that together, and then when I was putting that material together, I said, well, why should we stop with sound? I mean, I kind of realized, it kind of gave me an interpretation of my own work they'd never quite grasped before, which is like, obviously I've been interested in visual noise my whole career, really, starting with the early drawings and these paintings, and then into the early computer virus project and on through. So I said, wow, I have a new kind of way of looking at my own work, and that opened up a field of research where I started to go through the history of art and architecture and archaeology, and I started to put together every example that I had come across through my travels in Europe, particularly, and most specifically my research into the Grotte de Lascaux, the Lascaux Caves, which I was able to get permission to go into the real deal for my...
That's quite a challenge to get the permission.
Yeah, you have to be working on a PhD or something for that, which I was at the time. So it really opened the door, and then I found a part of the cave that had not been very well considered, called the apside, the apse, and that led me to sort of, again, a kind of a new interpretation of art history, really. And that's what I sketch out in the book, is this development of what I call finally the art of noise, but in a broader way, not just audio only, but visually and ultimately cognitively. So it is, again, a kind of interdisciplinary, intertextural approach to the material, but that book then was taken up by a few curators in Italy, and they proposed it to the committee for the Venice Biennale this year, and they accepted the project, and so now it will be a small group show of 10 artists curated by these Italian curators, but working off the concepts of my book, and they quote some of the passages of the book in their statements so far, and that is, again, we're kind of tying this into the 100th anniversary of Russolo's Art of Noises manifesto. So that is sort of the grand trajectories. But looking back, it was already there in the early drawings, and in fact, the only work I reproduce of my own in the book, besides the cover, which is one of the recent paintings from the last show I did in New York, were 3 drawings from the 80s, because I could already see somehow that's what I was doing without knowing, or not using those terms, or not thinking of it in those terms.
But that language has come back to quite some extent. So
Yeah,
you see
it's
this
kind of
new
boomerang,
generation, yeah,
sort
this
of
new
boomeranged
generation.
around.
So I mean, you're a Chicago
Yeah.
guy, and I think if I recall correctly, there was a huge industrial music, industrial noise scene back in the day. There was Coil, and there was that record label a couple of record labels that did some
Out of Chicago?
out of Chicago.
Yeah.
Can't remember the names.
Big
offhand.
Black, there's.
Right. So it's really part of that generation that we sort of.
I think it's very much part of that generation, and don't forget the no wave movement in New York.
Yeah.
I mean, I was going to see DNA and Mars and Reese Chatham and
Sure.
Glenn Bronco, and when I first got to New York, I was working for Lamont Young as his
Oh.
archivist.
Okay.
So I was sort of,
Not a bad place to
it was a lucky
to
break.
cut your teeth.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
it was a lucky, wonderful opportunity, and I, paid my rent while I struggled to make a little bit as an artist, and at the same time, I learned a hell of a lot about fluxus
Right.
and noise music, what I would
Which
call noise
ties
music.
in. Yeah.
Met interesting people.
And I want you to, actually the cover of your book is the photograph that we
Yeah.
see here in the painting. The title of the painting is what again?
Euphoric Anus.
Euphoric Anus series, right. But could you talk a little bit about, corporality, the body,
Yeah.
electronics, digital, there's this whole sort of relationship and this thread throughout your work. It's always been about skin and bodies and bone.
Yes.
And I'd love to hear more about that.
Particularly the energy that connects these tissues and the kind of energetic vibrational field, which really is electronics. I mean, let's face it, everything that we do, we plug into the wall, we use electricity, we use electrons. So you can call it digital art, you can call it media art, you can call it whatever you will, but it's electronic art on some level. And I like that the electron, and it goes back to my these early pieces we were talking
Right.
about, where I was thinking about quantum physics and how could one represent that in visual art, can one? And it's just a fascination between, I guess, layers of reality, because as you say, there's the skin, and then there's the muscle, and then there's the bone, and then there's that network of nerves underneath that do all the connectivity. It's something that fascinating, but this anus work, it started with the retina, and the retina started with the book, because I was saying, okay, noise as a visual phenomenon, let's take the eye and work on that. So I did a series of the retina, and then I did I want to go from retina to rectal, because it was the full spectrum of human input-output, our
Right.
sensual block, if you will.
Can I interrupt you?
Yeah, absolutely.
And ask you, there was the solar anus by George Bataille
Yes.
and the pineal eye. And do you feel that there was, is there some sort of relationship with Bataille that you have, an affinity that you have?
A huge affinity with Bataille. I guess you could say, after Deleuze, might be my second, maestro. I went to Versailles, for example, to try to find his tomb in the cemetery of Versailles. Not Versailles, Vesoul. Vesoul. And I couldn't find it, and I was so frustrated because I wanted to, leave a poem or something.
Right.
I talk a little bit about it in the book, but yeah. Although I try to escape the kind of Catholic transgressiveness of his situation, even though I also come from a Catholic background, I didn't want to get caught into a kind of action-reaction, black-white responsiveness to it. I mean, my spirituality, I try to be a little more experimental and takes from Taoism, for example. I find that more pertinent in terms of energy and fields.
And I also see, I think, a Hopi sculpture.
Exactly. American Indian religions and animism of all kinds, pantheism of all kinds, and very much, I guess you'd say, a pagan more than anything. I really do believe that there's energetic, intelligence in matter and in the environment, and that we should really be a little more careful with the environment because it's a living body.
Absolutely. you mentioned, you were talking about getting a PhD and going to Lascaux, so was that later in your career? Was that,
Yeah, that would have been the later 90s.
Okay, so it's recent, fairly recent.
Fairly recent.
Yeah.
13 years ago. It was a 3-year program in Wales with
Okay.
Roy Ascott, who's a pretty well-known theoretician in interactive art and art and consciousness studies.
So that was going back for a PhD in the arts.
Yes, in fact, when Roy, to be honest, Roy almost recruited me. He was looking for mid-career artists that were also somewhat theoreticians, that could write about these issues, that were interested in these issues, and were interested in pursuing a doctoral program. And I found it very interesting. It was a great experience for me.
Did you enjoy going back and sort of kicking into an academic relationship again?
Absolutely. I enjoyed the rigor of having to write a thesis. I mean, it was really a challenge, and I needed to do it within the 3-year funding opportunity that I had. And it just, as I pointed out with Lascaux, you just have opportunities to go places and see things, and you have like another perspective on architecture and all kinds of things that you might look at and go, oh, that's cool, but then you say why, and then you really dig in and find out what's pertinent to your subject. But Roy's program was a little non-traditional in that we would, of course, go to the University of Wales, and they were very old school, very rigorous in terms of the scrutinizers and the supervisors and all that. But we then could come back to our studios and work on our research, our thesis. And so it had a little bit of dynamism in it that I really appreciated. It worked for me, someone that had a lot of self-motivation, and that I could just really feel free to go and do what I need to do, and I highly appreciated it. It was very
Well,
and I met great people.
I'm looking here at the towards immersive intelligence. This is from that.
That's right,
After
after
that period, right?
Yeah, that titled essay is really a concise summation of my thesis, which was looking at virtual reality in terms of the immersive capacity or the ideal, and then kind of looking at that critically. So it's really about looking at society in general now as computing becomes ubiquitous.
Yeah.
And it's like where's our critical faculties, where's our total immersion, and don't you think we should be conscious of that choice?
And also in some respects, this period 1993 to 2006 is really sort of a period of reassessment and reintegration of a whole group of ideas. Could you comment some more about that?
Absolutely. I do think it's like the come to fruition of conceptual art. It's really Duchampian conceptual art. In fact, I could say contemporary art today is post-conceptual. When people ask me, are you a digital artist? I can't say no, but I really consider myself more a post-conceptual artist in that I take concepts as the basis of the work as absolutely fundamental. It's not that you're not working with material, but that for me, I need a theme, a concept, a project that has a kind of intellectual, mental, quasi-academic attribute to it. Like right now I'm working on a new series based on Homer's Odyssey. It sounds academic, but